also Canto 5, Chapter 5, Text 1, it is said, Nayam deho deha bhajam loke kasman kaman arkate vidujam ye tapo divyam putrakaye nasatvam sudyet yasmat amasudyam pulantam. My dear sons, there is no reason to labor very hard for sense pleasure while in this human form of life. Such pleasures are available to the stooliers, the hogs. Rather, you should undergo penances in this life, by which your existence will be purified, and as a result, you will be able to enjoy unlimited transcendental bliss. Therefore, those who are true yogis or learned transcendentalists are not attracted by sense pleasures, which are causes of continuous material existence. The more one is addicted to material pleasures, the more he is entrapped by material miseries. Yehi samsparshata bhoga dukkayonaya evate adyantavanta kunteya nateshu brahmate buddha. An intelligent person does not take part in the sources of misery, which are due to contact with the material senses. O son of Kunti, such pleasures have a beginning and an end, and so the wise man does not delight in them. Hare Krishna, thanks to everyone for coming and for staying. So, is it controversial? Giving up sense gratification? It's, I guess in the greater society it certainly is, when that's the rule of life for almost everyone. Then to say the opposite, I guess, could be taken as controversial. To understand it and maybe avoid some of the controversy, put it in perspective, let's take a broader look at the practice of Krishna consciousness first, and how this concept of controlling the senses, denying the senses, plays into it. In Vedic rhetoric and logic and argument and philosophy, everything is described very precisely, and it's often the technique used, or the descriptions used are described as what's called Swarup Lakshana and Tatashka Lakshana. Everything is described by a primary description or a primary characteristic, and then that description is also supported by secondary descriptions or secondary characteristics. And there are many examples of this. There's the definition of pure devotional service itself. Anyadilashita shunyam yadakama yinavritam anukulina Krishna Vishnuanam bhaktir uttavam. That pure devotional service, its primary characteristic is anukulina Krishna, its loving service to Krishna, performed properly under the direction of Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. That's the primary characteristic of what pure devotional service is. And the secondary characteristic is at the beginning, and that service should also be completely devoid of any material desire, any desire for fruitive activity, any desire for mental speculation, any desire for the perfections of the yoga process. So there's a positive definition, and then the secondary or negative definition, what it is and what it isn't. And many times things are described like this. We've heard, smartavya satyam Krishna, vismartavya najatuche. That there's only two rules in devotional service, a positive one and a negative one. The positive one, the swarup, is smartavya satyam Krishna. You always remember Krishna. And the negative one is you never forget Krishna. Or in the items of devotional service, or the activities of devotional service, for one who is practicing surrender to Krishna or Sharanagati. This was taught by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to Sanatana Goswami, who then included it in his Hari Bhakti Vilas that anukulasya sankalpa and pratikulasya varjanam, that you accept everything that's favorable for devotional service and you reject everything that's unfavorable for devotional service. So everything is understood like that. Or even in the very first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, Janmadhyasyayitam Vayadintartashtrateshvara, a whole list of different qualities and characteristics of the Supreme Absolute Truth. And at the end of that verse it says, Satyam Param Dhimahi. So the primary characteristic is Satyam Param, that Krishna is the Supreme Absolute Truth. And all the other things, he's the Supreme Absolute Truth, and the secondary characteristics, he's the creator and the maintainer and the destroyer of everything. He knows everything that's going on. He's the source of illusion in the material world. All of these things are secondary characteristics. So these positive and negative, primary and secondary descriptions are there for us to have a very full and very detailed and very scientific understanding of what Krishna is, what we're supposed to do, how we're supposed to behave, and what is the goal of life for us. So the Swarup Lakshana, or the primary characteristic, could be narrowed down in different ways, but primarily we say, like I said, Anukulena Krishna Vishnuvanam Bhakti-uttamam. That is devotional service to Krishna. Prabhupada said in different ways he would simplify this and state in very almost sutra-like statements. One time he said, you cannot understand Krishna. Nobody can understand. Krishna himself cannot understand. And what to speak of us? Therefore, our only business, how to love Krishna, how to serve Krishna. So if we want a Swarup Lakshana, a primary characteristic of what our lives are supposed to be, what our devotional service is supposed to be, Prabhupada sums it up nicely there. How to love Krishna, how to serve Krishna. Very simple form. Then there are other things. Prabhupada also said, this is a story I've always loved. This is back in early days of ISKCON in 65 or 66, I'm not sure which, the 26 Second Avenue.
66. Must be 66, it was 26.
Okay. Then, yeah, 1966. And there was, Prabhupada would give the lecture regularly, and there was one man who was very agitated in the audience. And at the end of the lecture, he had a question. This is from the Lila Rita. During the question and answer period, the man asked, what about my mind? Prabhupada gave him many philosophical replies, but the man kept repeating, what about my mind? What about my mind? With a pleading, compassionate look, Prabhupada said, I have no other medicine. Please chant this Hare Krishna. I have no other explanation. I have no other answer. So this is another very simple Swarup Lakshana. What are we supposed to do? Chant Hare Krishna. This is our main practice, our main shelter. Or that's the practice of chanting, and there's also the process of hearing. Another time, Srila Prabhupada said, if you simply hear without doing anything else, simply sit down in the temple, and whenever there is talk of Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, you go on hearing, bas. Even if you don't understand, please hear, that's all. That vibration, that mantra vibration will help you. Understanding is not a very important thing. So these things, surrender to Krishna, serve Krishna, love Krishna, chant Hare Krishna, all of these things are the positive side of what devotional service is. We can generalize that what's being referred to are all the different angas of bhakti. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasam, Sakyam, Atmanivedanam. All of these things are the positive engagements, the positive definition, the positive guidelines for our life, what we're supposed to do. These are the valuable things, the valuable practices which we're supposed to take up. And these valuable things are called artha. Artha can mean wealth or a desirable thing. And accepting them is called artha pravriti. Everyone can still hear me, right?
Yeah.
Accepting these positive things, hearing and chanting and serving and loving Krishna, This is called the art of poverty, accepting the desirable thing, accepting the valuable thing. Prabhupada would occasionally quote one verse from a Bhagavatam commentary. Aragyu Bhagavan Vrajesha Tanayas Tadam Vrindavanam Ranya Kachid Upasana Vrajavadu Vargena Vakalpita Srimad Bhagavatam Pramanam Amalam Prema Pumarta Mahan Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Matam Idam Tatradara Nampara. And this commenter wrote that the opinion of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, at whose feet I surrender, his opinion is that Aradhu Bhagavan Vrajesha Tanayas, that the Lord Krishna is Bhagavan, and we should worship him, and the best worship of Bhagavan is that developed by the Brijavasis, by the residents of Vrindavan. Tadam Vrindavanam, and the highest abode, the highest place, is his Vrindavandam. Ramya Kachid Upasana Vrajavadu Vargena Kalpita. The best worship is that developed by the gopis of Vrindavan, their most expert servants. Srimad Bhagavatam Pramanam Amalam. Srimad Bhagavatam is the spotless and perfect authority for everything in life, everything in devotional service. And Prema Pumarta Mahan. Prema, love of Krishna. Pum Arta, for every person. The most Arta Mahan, the most desirable goal, the greatest wealth, the greatest jewel to be possessed is love of Krishna. And this is the opinion of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, this is Arta Pravritti. This is what we accept. That we chant Hare Krishna, we sing Kirtan, we glorify Krishna, we preach about Krishna, hear about Krishna, and serve him in all the many, many ways that Srila Prabhupada has given us. And this is what we accept, and this is what will make our life perfect. And then there's the other side, you could say a negative side, or the Tatashta Lakshana, the secondary side, the negative definition, is what are we to avoid? If there's art of poverty, that valuable thing that we accept, there is also anarta nivriti, those undesirable things that we need to give up, that we need to leave aside and leave behind in our lives in order to accept the principles given by Srila Prabhupada, by Srila Rupa Goswami, who all explain this. We accept devotional service, and we also have to reject some things. And this is anarta nivriti. Prabhupada also said that this Krishna consciousness is a very simple thing. One yes and four no's. So there's the yes, the Swarup Lakshana, and that yes, he said, chant Hare Krishna. And the four no's, no meat eating, no illicit sex, no intoxication, no gambling. This is the anarta nivriti, the unwanted things which we need to give up. So, again, just as I generalized the arta, the desirable things, as all the limbs of devotional service, we can also generalize the anarta as giving up sense gratification. And this is the big no in capital letters that we have to deal with, that we have to face, and that we have to learn how to give up in devotional service, how to give up sense gratification. Everyone in the world is after sense gratification, as I said at the beginning. And Prabhupada quoted once Manu Samhita that, what's that? I can't remember the first half. Pravriti esha bhutanam, and nivriti tu mahapalam. So, everyone in the world is mad after accepting sense gratification. But nivriti tu mahapalam, but the greatest fruit of existence can be gained through giving up the unwanted things. This is Manu Samhita. So this negative tatashta lakshana of pure devotional service is important. Prabhupada would sometimes give the example of the balance scale. Like if you shop in the markets in India, you see these scales, you put on one side the weight and on the other side the vegetables. And if one side goes down, the other side goes up. And if one side goes up, the other side goes down. So if we accept devotional service or try to accept devotional service, but we don't decrease the sense gratification side, if we decrease the sense gratification side, then the Krishna side will go up. But if we don't decrease it, then the Krishna side will go down. So this is the tension between the art of property, accepting the desirable thing, and rejecting the undesirable thing that we need to learn how to balance. Prabhupada discusses this is Bhagavad Gita 267. Indriyanam hicharatam yandano vidyate tarasya harati pragyam vayur navanti mandasi. As a boat on the water is swept away by a strong wind, even one of the roaming senses on which the mind focuses can carry away a man's intelligence. So this is the problem with sense gratification. If we allow the senses to become attached to the material sense objects, then your intelligence will be carried away. And without that intelligence, it will be very difficult, if not impossible, to practice Krishna consciousness properly. In the purport, Prabhupada says, unless all of the senses are engaged in the service of the Lord, even one of them engaged in sense gratification can deviate the devotee from the path of transcendental advancement. As mentioned in the life of Maharaj Amrish, all of the senses must be engaged in Krishna consciousness, for that is the correct technique for controlling the mind. And Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, commenting on this verse, says, explaining the example of the wind carrying away the boat, that the wind comes and it blows out the sails and moves the sails, and then the sail pulls on the rigging, the mast, or the ropes or whatnot holding it together, and then that pulls on the boat itself, and the whole boat is swept away. Similarly, if we allow our senses to improperly contact the sense objects, then the senses are pulled away, which pulls our mind away, which pulls our intelligence away, and pulls ourselves, our soul, away from Krishna consciousness. So this is why controlling the senses is so important. Again, going back to the definition of pure devotional service, anyabhilashita shunyam, we have to give up all other desires. And specifically, that means all the desires we have for sense gratification. Also in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, text 34, in the purport, Prabhupada says, unrestricted sense enjoyment is the cause of material engagement. The one who follows the rules and regulations of the revealed scriptures does not become entangled by the sense objects. For example, sex enjoyment is a necessity for the conditioned soul, and sex enjoyment is allowed under the license of marriage ties. According to scriptural injunctions, one is forbidden to engage in sex relationships with any woman other than one's wife. All other women are to be considered as one's mother. These propensities are to be curbed, otherwise they will be stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. So we have a body, we're in a body, we have senses, and those senses have a tendency to reach out. So the rules of Shastra and the rules given by Guru and Sadhu are there to help restrict that, to help control that. This is difficult. Those who have been practicing Krishna consciousness know that it's not, well, it's simple, but it's not easy. It's not necessarily natural at first to control the senses. Just like if someone is addicted to smoking cigarettes, there's practically nothing in the world more unnatural than smoking cigarettes. But if someone is habituated to smoking cigarettes and their body gets used to it, and they're used to, just like habit, you wake up in the morning, you light a cigarette, you finish a meal, you light a cigarette, and the nicotine gets in your body, and then you desire it very strongly, then giving it up feels unnatural, even though it's actually the smoking which is itself unnatural. So giving up sense gratification is the most natural thing for the spirit soul. But because we're conditioned, it feels very unnatural. It feels very difficult to do. We are all spiritual by nature. And as spirit, Jiver Surupai, Krishna and dāsa, spiritual in nature and the eternal servant of Krishna, our nature is anandamaya dāsa, that we're blissful by nature and seeking bliss, seeking happiness by nature. So we can't deny that. It's who we are as spirit souls. This is what we do. We seek pleasure. But if we're overly associated with the body, if we're overly attached to the body, if we're overly attached to the senses, then we misplace that search for happiness. And instead we put it into the search for sense objects through the senses. Yehi samsparsha ja bhoga. We're thinking samsparsha ja. Sparsha means touch, and ja means like janma, born of. Yehi samsparsha ja bhoga. That we think that happiness or sense gratification comes from touching the objects of the senses. If there's something soft, we want to touch it. If there's some smell, we want to smell it, and it touches with our olfactory nerves. Or we touch it through our vision, or through our ears, we touch the different sense objects. And we mistakenly call this pleasure. We mistakenly call this enjoyment. Yehi samsparsha ja bhoga. Dukkha yonaya evate. But this is dukkha yonaya. Just like samsparsha ja, ja means janma. Dukkha yonaya, yoni also means the place of birth. So we think that happiness is born from touching the sense objects, but actually what is actually born is dukkha yonaya. What's actually born is unhappiness from trying to gain happiness through contact to the sense objects and the senses by touching them, we think. So why? Why is it's supposed to be happiness? Everyone thinks it's happiness. Why is it unhappiness? Two reasons. Because we're spirit souls, that means when our senses are touching the sense objects, we as spirit souls are not actually even directly touching or directly experiencing that. We're spirit souls, so the contact of material senses and material sense objects can't make us happy. Because it's outside of our nature and it's actually outside of our very existence. Have you ever seen, like in an amusement park, this thing where you drop a quarter in and there's a machine that you control with a crane? Has everyone seen that? There's a crane and you try to control the crane and reach in and pull some gift out. So just as the person is outside controlling this crane, trying to reach in and grab something separate, we're also within, we're the spirit soul, but we're operating this material body, which is actually outside of us. It's an envelope around us. And so whatever we grab, or whatever we contact, or whatever we think we've gained, we've not actually gained it. It's all outside of us. So because it's outside of us, it cannot make us happy. Not if we understand our true nature. And the second reason why it's dukkha yoni, why it's the cause of suffering, is that even if you think, even if you believe that this will give me happiness, it will be taken away. You will lose it. You make $1 million, you're going to lose it. Even if you manage to hold on to it for your lifespan, which you may not be able to do, you'll lose it at the time of death. You gain some person who you think a relationship with them will make you happy, and that person will be taken away. Or some wealth, or your youth, or your beauty, or your health. All of these things that we think make us happy will be taken away. So because of that, these things will not make us happy, and therefore it's said that this material world is a place of suffering. Just one nice conversation with Srila Prabhupada. Pushpa Krishna said, they can use this argument though, Prabhupada, I've heard it before, that quote, so God has placed us in this world. Okay, there is God, and he's placed us in this world, and he has created the world also, and he has made these things very, very enjoyable, sex life, and this and that. So why not enjoy if God has created it? Prabhupada, that is foolishness. That is foolishness. It is not enjoyable. That is, if a criminal says the prison house is very enjoyable, it is like that. Chaivan Prabhu says, but all the travel brochures and all the advertisements, they say it's nice here. All the advertising and travel brochures, they say it is nice. Prabhupada, let him say, but the prison house, is it nice? That is foolishness. Chaivan again, but everyone else says it's nice. Prabhupada, everyone? I don't say. Chaivan, you are the only one who says it is not nice. Prabhupada said, yes, because I am the only intelligent person. So, this is the understanding of this material world. It's ultimately a source of unhappiness because it's incompatible with our nature of spirit soul, and because any happiness, either imagined or real, is going to end, is going to be taken away. Prabhupada said it's the prison house. You can make the prison house as nice as you want, but it's still a prison house. So Prabhupada is the only intelligent person. Nateshu Ramate Buddha. The intelligent person does not delight in these things that are actually sources of misery. So Prabhupada is that Buddha, that intelligent person. And we also want to develop that intelligence. Now, so we do that, we want to control our senses. Bare minimum, no meat eating, no illicit sex, no intoxication, no gambling. And in general, we want to cultivate a mentality of not diving unrestrictedly into sense gratification. Prabhupada has also said sense gratification is like salt, that you need a little, like salt, you need a little bit in your diet just to keep your food healthy and tasteful and keep you sort of, alive and enlivened. But if you put too much salt in, then the food is ruined and your health is ruined. So sense gratification, there's a little sense gratification in life that we can accept, like Prabhupada in that purport I read, he was talking about sex life, that in marriage there's some license to enjoy, but not unlimited license, not unrestricted, not too much salt. Another time a devotee was not complaining, but lamenting to Prabhupada that, I can't control my tongue, I'm eating too much, I'm eating so much. And Prabhupada said, yes, I know, I also have a tongue. So Prabhupada also had a tongue. He understands the law of the senses, but he also understands that the tongue has desire, and the spirit soul has desire. So you restrict it from disgusting things, from unfit things, from things that are not offered to Krishna, and you engage it in nice prasad that is offered to Krishna. And once a week or every now and then you have a huge feast, and then you eat normal prasad, normal healthy basic prasad the rest of the time. And the senses can be both appeased and controlled in that way. So we need to control the senses. We want to control our senses. And in that process, there's two basic methods or pathways to doing this. One of them is the method of you grit your teeth and you steel yourself and I'm not gonna do this XYZ thing. I want to, I'd like to, but I know it's bad for me, so I'm gonna grit my teeth and be determined and be strong, and I'm not going to do that thing. And we need to do that. In many cases, we need to do that. Especially those who are initiated. We absolutely have to do that with the 4 regulative principles, for example. And many times, we may have a desire for something, we may want something, we may not feel like renouncing it, but we know it's bad for us, so we deny ourselves that thing. So this is one method, the grit your teeth and tolerate the desire and go on with your life and go on with your devotional service. And we need to use this method sometimes because sense gratification, especially overindulgence or illicit indulgence, is so damaging to our physical, emotional, and spiritual health, that it very severely impacts our practice of devotional service. So we need to do that. But that method cannot last forever. You can only grit your teeth for so long and tolerate for so long. So therefore, there's another method, and that method is also described in Bhagavad Gita. Vishaya vinivartate niraharasideinam rasovarjam rasopyasya haram drishwan nivartate. That's why I took the time to discuss artha pravritti at the beginning before discussing anantanivritti. Because that positive engagement in devotional service will give us a pleasure, give us a higher taste that will make it easy and natural and eventually even spontaneous for us to resist the lure of sense gratification. By experiencing that one may have desires in their heart and want to enjoy, but restrict them by force, and that can go on. But when one experiences a higher taste in Krishna consciousness, then the mind is automatically fixed. So this is the balance between artha pravritti and anartha-nivritti, that we tolerate the urges of the senses, don't overindulge them, don't illicitly indulge them by force if necessary, because that keeps us pure and determined to engage in devotional service. And then as we engage in devotional service, we actually can taste the higher taste of pleasure in serving Krishna, at which point the appeal of living our lives based on contacting the senses with the sense objects loses all of its attraction. In Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Srila Rupa Goswami, in describing the different stages of devotional service, from sadhana bhakti up to bhava bhakti and up to pure prema bhakti, he describes the pleasure available at each of those stages. And he says, even at the stage of sadhana bhakti, one who's practicing, maybe a beginner or maybe someone practicing a long time but is still practicing. That means you're not fully realized, you're not perfect, you may not be on the higher or highest stages of devotional service, but you're very sincerely practicing. You want to please Krishna. You're following the injunctions of Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, and you're avoiding entanglement in karma and jnana. That means that's practice of pure devotional service. Even at that stage, the pleasure available to a devotee is greater than the pleasure available from all sense gratification, even up to the pleasure of the demigods and Lord Brahma in the heavenly planets, and greater than the pleasure available even from liberation from the material world, impersonal liberation. So even on the stage of practice, can get a higher taste, and in this way, again, not just by force, but by getting a higher taste, can learn to neglect the strong pull of the senses. And then as one advances at the stage of bhava bhakti, the pleasure one experiences increases even more. And that pleasure is called moksha labhukta. That pleasure is so great that it mocks the pleasure of impersonal liberation. That the pleasure of impersonal liberation is like nothing compared to the pleasure of serving Krishna at the stage of bhava bhakti. And then one comes to the stage of prema bhakti, pure love of Krishna. At that stage, that pleasure is called sandrananda visheshatma. That pleasure in serving Krishna becomes so thick and so condensed like you take milk and you boil it down, it becomes condensed and it becomes ghee. And you boil it down, it becomes more condensed and burfi and then koya. It becomes so thick and so dense. So similarly, the pleasure at that stage of devotional service is so thick and so condensed and so relishable that you can't even perceive the existence of material sense gratification. You don't even see it anymore. It's not even on your radar anymore. So that's a very elevated stage. But again, Srila Goswami makes the point that even at the stage of practice, the pleasure available can enable one to overcome the pull of the senses. So this is the balance that we want, the balance that we need. We control our senses in order to remain pure, in order to remain staunch devotees and keep up our practice and keep up our enthusiasm. And then by that practice, we get more and more pleasure. And as we do that, controlling the senses becomes easier and easier and more natural. It's a little early, but if there's any questions or comments now, we can discuss them. Yes, Guru?
You were talking about referring to the verse, that the contact of the senses with our objects is dukkha yonaya. Dukkha means unhappiness or misery, and that comes from misery. But then you were explaining it that the way it's dukkha was because you're going to have to lose it at some time in the future.
That's part of it, yes.
Yes. And the other part was?
Was that it's not actual happiness, because we as spirit souls don't get happiness in material contact.
So it's kind of like, in order to see that it's unhappiness, you got to take a step back, and you have to, and it doesn't really, you can't really register that until you have this other kind of happiness that you were talking about coming from spiritual life, right? Am I understanding that right?
Yeah. Although I think it's also possible to get a theoretical understanding before you even experience Krishna consciousness. I think some of us may have had the experience of reading or hearing that you're not this body, your spirit, soul, and that, material sense objects won't satisfy you. So that's also a sort of an inspiration. But ultimately, you have to get that higher taste. Without that higher taste, simply renunciation by itself, without the addition of devotional service, ultimately won't profit us and won't last.
Because we'll have to get some kind of enjoyment somehow.
Yes, it's unavoidable. Anandamaya vyasana is our nature. And if we're intelligent and learn it and hear from Srila Prabhupada and the Shastra, will understand where what's the verse he quoted today from Yes. So if you want Rama Sokyam Tvanantam, there's a method. And if you want the Sokyam, the happiness of the hogs, there's also a method. But that method, it's available to the hogs. How valuable could it actually be? The sensible person will understand. So there's different ways of looking at it, but philosophical understanding is a good start. A plate of prasadam is a good start, because that's also, even if you don't understand it, it's a spiritual engagement of the senses rather than a material engagement of the senses. Going to kirtan, hearing class, associated with devotees, all of these things which are also contact of the senses, but not with the material sense objects. We're contacting Krishna in different ways. And that's a real contact. The contact with the material senses and the sense objects is not a real contact, because the soul is many envelopes removed from that. The senses, the sense objects, the senses, and the material body with all this blood and muscle and bone and nerve, and the nerve impulses traveling, and then the mind, the intelligence, the false ego, before it even reaches the soul. But an engagement in devotional service is directly to the soul contact. So that is such potency, even in the very beginning, even unknowingly, although we want to also know and understand and do all these things. Is that okay? Yes, Mother?
Yes, hi, Krishna Guru. So, the modes of material...
I'm sorry, slightly louder, please.
I have a microphone.
Hi, Krishna Guru. So the modes of material nature have a direct effect on us, not as spirit soul, but our bodies, the deha, the covering of the soul. So our bodies are affected by these multimaterial nature. My question relates to aspiring to become Vaishnavas and devotees and practicing, doing our practices, which at times can wax and wane. Krishna gives us great compassion and understands that as long as we're trying, we're endeavoring, we get credit for that, right? But the aspect of perfection, which is a material contamination, I'm speaking in terms of, there are sometimes people say, oh, do it perfectly, do it perfectly, do it perfectly. In accordance with bhakti, there's no perfection really required, is that correct? It's just loving and desiring to love and serve Krishna, the perfection comes? Or is it that, no, you have to stay inside the lines, you have to do it like this, like this. That's the only way that it's considered.
I would say it's both. That we need to be very rigid and as perfect as we can in our practices, and at the same time understanding that perfection is not within our grasp by ourselves, and that ultimately we're dependent on the mercy of the Vaishnavas and on the mercy of Krishna. But we at the same time have to be very strict and very rigid and as perfect as we can be, practice as perfectly as we can. And that will also help Krishna. If we do that, that will inspire Krishna's mercy. It's not that I've mastered Krishna consciousness, I'm now perfect, but we practice as carefully and as perfectly and with as much love and care, attention as we can. And then Krishna sees that and we become purified. So it's both.
Because, there's that phrase, there's no perfection in the material world. But there's the aspiration to serve and love, which I guess gets us to that platform, like you said. It's both. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Yes.
My understanding would be, whatever we do, whatever our job is, whatever our, social family situation is. Okay. How do you measure perfection? How are you going to measure it? Well, the measure is if Krishna is pleased. That's the measure. So, whatever you're doing, you may be an architect or a laborer, a cook, an intellectual, but if you can do those things in such a way that Krishna is pleased, that's perfect. That's perfection. And so, whether it's according a little bit out of the lines or not, that's up to that's Krishna's. Krishna's going to see that and he'll decide.
Right. Yes. Nice. Thank you. Anything else?
I got a big mouth, I'm sure I'll get it. How do you know when Krishna is pleased? I said, how do you know when Krishna is pleased?
I'm not sure you can always exactly 100% know right at any single particular moment, but there are some guidelines that can help you understand. If the devotees are pleased with you, if Krishna is pleased, if the Guru is pleased with you, if you're actually following the guidance of the Shastra, if we're sincere in our endeavors, which takes some introspection to know, then we can guess or assume or hope that Krishna is pleased with us. And in the longer run, if we're remaining enthused in our performance of devotional service and active and progressive in our performance of devotional service, then from that we can assume that Krishna is pleased with us and things are more or less okay. And if we find that the devotees are, I wouldn't say finding fault, but if you're doing things that are upsetting to the devotee community, or if your spiritual master is not pleased, if you find yourself losing your enthusiasm, then you may assume that maybe Krishna is not pleased, and what that means is that I'm not working sincerely and properly in every way So I may need to re-examine my life, my service, rethink how I'm doing things. So, I can't know, you can't know, none of us can know what's in Krishna's mind in any particular time, but I think those are some practical guidelines we can use for knowing if Krishna is pleased with us. Are the devotees pleased? Is the Guru pleased? Are we following the rules and regulations nicely? And are we progressing in devotional service? Prabhupada said, just like when you eat, if you're eating, then automatically you're getting, your hunger is relieved, and you're being nourished, and your health and strength are increasing. So you can understand in that way if Krishna is pleased. And if you're eating and you're becoming weak, and your hunger is not being appeased, and you're remaining very weak, Prabhupada said, just like if someone has some worms in their intestines, he would pronounce intestines. You're eating, but the worms are taking away all the nourishment. So if we're doing devotional service, we think we're doing devotional service, but we're not being happy and enlivened and progressive, then we could maybe start looking that there's some Prabhupada said about it, he said some Maya's play going on. Maybe we're committing some offense, maybe we're making some mistake, we're not practicing properly. So those are just some general guidelines I would say about understanding how Krishna is pleased. Thank you. There's one nice story, just...
Can I just add one?
Sure, go ahead.
So you said progress in devotional service. What does that mean?
Say that again, please.
Progress in devotional service is an example of
That you're...
us satisfying, pleasing Krishna. So there are so many ways this word progress can be used in the material world. If someone gets a position, or someone's wealthy, or someone's, whatever these material connotations have, that can make people, make the false ego larger.
Yeah.
How do we understand progress as it relates to bhakti? And
there's so many things. Again, are the devotees happy with us? Are we becoming more naturally renounced? Are we doing more service? Are we doing better quality service? Are we feeling enthused in our service? Are we more attracted to chanting and hearing and speaking about Krishna? All of these things are signs. And what you anyway, those are some of the signs. Are we devotees and Guru pleased with us? Are we enlivened, enthused? Like the balance example is our Krishna consciousness, both in how we practice it externally and within our mind and our heart. Is that going up, and is the sense of application going down? One nice story is that Srila Sanatana Goswami, now I can't remember, no, I think it was Srila Rupa Goswami, was sitting in meditation, and in his meditation he was actually entering into Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. And in that pastime, Radharani was in a grass, what would you say, like a hut in the woods. And all the gopis were there with her, decorating her to go out to be with Krishna. But unbeknownst to her, Krishna was outside the hut, and he had parted the reeds, and he was peeking in at her, getting her makeup and everything putting on. And all the gopis knew, but Radharani didn't know. And so after she was all decorated, the gopis held up a mirror to show her how she looked. And she saw a reflection in the mirror behind her, Krishna peeking in. And she got shocked and scared, and oh, he's peeking in, and all the gopis were laughing. And Srila Rupa Goswami, in his meditation, he also started laughing out loud at this pastime. Now, just at the moment he started laughing out loud, there happened to be walking just by him one old Vaishnava. And he was so old that he would hobble along with a stick and walking in a somewhat crooked way. So he started laughing just when that elderly Vaishnava went by. And that elderly Vaishnava thought, oh, what is this? I may walk in a funny way because I'm an old man. Why is Srila Rupa Goswami laughing at me? And he didn't take it very seriously, but he had this thought, oh, why is he laughing at me? And he went on. And when that happened, Srila Rupa Goswami's meditation immediately broke. And he tried again and again to enter into that meditation entering into Krishna's pastimes, and he found himself unable to do it. So he went to his elder brother, Srila Sanatana Goswami, and explained the situation. I was meditating like this and enjoying Krishna's pastimes, and then it broke and I couldn't enter. What happened? And Sanatana Goswami, very intelligent, said, the only explanation is that you must have offended someone. And Rupa Goswami said, oh, I've offended a Vaishnava. This is horrible. But I don't even know what I did. How do I fix it? What do I do? So Srila Sanatana Goswami said, you arrange a festival and you invite all the Vaishnavas in the whole village to come, and you see who doesn't come. So he did that, and that elderly Vaishnava, maybe had a little hurt feelings, he didn't show up. So Rupa Goswami went to him and fell at his feet and begged his forgiveness, and the elderly Vaishnava also fell at his feet and said, oh, I'm such a rascal that, just because you laughed at Krishna's pastimes, I took offense. I'm so fallen, and we're falling at each other's feet and begging forgiveness from each other. And so I'm not even sure where I was. Oh yeah, how you could understand if you've made a mistake is that if your Krishna consciousness you find impeded, then you may have some offense, knowingly or unknowingly, or you may be overindulging in sense gratification. So this way, we can know a little bit, or get some indication how we're doing in our devotional service. Is Krishna pleased with us or not? Hare Krishna. We're short on time, but quickly.
When you were speaking, thank you very much for the really nice knowledge you shared. All of a sudden, it came to my mind the image of Prahlad Maharaj, how he was, and Lord Krishna just appeared, and then also Sudama Vipra, how he just brought these handful of rice, not even cooked, and Lord Krishna, as we understand, quickly got off from his seat and went there. And then all of a sudden I remembered how in the verse with love and devotion, and so is that correct, like with sincerity and love and honesty?
Yes.
Then if the person does it that way, it's sure that he would then give us reciprocate.
Absolutely, yes. A big offering is nice. If someone gives $1 million to the deities or to this movement, that's a good thing. But Krishna doesn't measure it by that. He measures it by the love and the sincerity with which it's given. We've just been reading in Bhagavatam in the morning class. Her last chapter was the passing away of Krishna Dev. And in one verse it said that Krishna Dev was lying there on the bed of arrows, and he had nothing. He had nothing to give, nothing to offer. He couldn't even move to offer obeisances. He had nothing to respect, so just within his mind, he surrendered everything to Krishna, and that was sufficient. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, everybody. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
I'd like to thank Acarya Prabhu for tonight's lesson on Bhagavad Gita and all the nice questions that were asked from the audience, nice discussion. Acarya Prabhu, he gives Srimad Bhagavatam class on Sunday mornings, so if you're interested in hearing more from him, please tune into our Zoom classes. You can find the link on the newsletter. If you're not part of our newsletter, it's up at the front desk and we'll sign you up. Right now we'll have Arti Kirtan by Vishnu Prabhu.
Krishna Pristhaya Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Krishna Krishna Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami
Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaurani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Dishatayine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivas Adi Gaur Bhakta-vrinda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivas Adi Gaur Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare. Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare. Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Rama, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare. Rama, Hare Jai Jagannath. Jai
Hare Krishna. Thank you all for coming today to the Sunday Feast program. Our crowd's a little bit smaller tonight compared to last week. We had a festival last week, Sringadeva's appearance day. But there was a wedding yesterday and a follow-up ceremony today at Kirtan. So our attendance isn't as big tonight. But we want to first start off by saying congratulations and offering our blessings to Aditya and Kirti, who got married yesterday. So let's raise our hands and chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, offering our prayers and blessings to them. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And we'd like to also announce our sponsor for this evening, Mahendra Mishra Prabhu. He sponsored actually several weeks on behalf of his wife, Dinesh Mishra. And on certain weeks when we don't have scheduled sponsors, he has sponsored for us, so we're very thankful to him. Please come forward. We have some prasad for you. We have a garland. Somebody took the garland. So we're going to have to wait. If you wait around long enough, we'll take one of the garlands from the deities after they come home. But we have some Mahaprasadam for you. And at the book table up front, a book of your choice. Krishna Guru has a coupon. So if you want to take a book of your choice from the book table. But we want to offer our thanks to you. So I ask the devotees to please raise your hands and chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you very much. This Thursday is the day of Ekadasi. We have this twice a month. It's the day we fast from beans and grains, as well as to do a little additional devotional service in our life. So if you follow Ekadasi, this is just a reminder. If you haven't done so and would like to do it, it's a great time to start. Just fast beans and grains and increase your devotional activity. Next Saturday, May 28th, is the Baltimore Rath Yatra. Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Ki. It's the first Rath Yatra locally here, in the Northeast that we can get to. That's happening this season. So it starts at around 12 o'clock noon. It's located right in the inner harbor of Baltimore. If you're part of our newsletter, we put a link on there that you can find. If you go to ISKCON Baltimore, you can get information. Or if you just want to know more about it, you can check at the front desk. We encourage the devotees to go. It's a great time to celebrate this wonderful festival, chant and dance with devotees, as well as support a local temple of ours. The next Rath Yatra festival is, after that, is New York Rath Yatra, and that is on June 11th. And the temple is sponsoring a bus for that day. If you remember pre-COVID, we used to take a bus up there every year, and then COVID kind of gave a little bit of a pause for a couple of years. So we're going to reestablish that again. And I don't know if you've noticed, the gas prices have started to go up considerably. Anybody notice that? And if you travel on the highway, I don't know if you've noticed the toll prices used to go up considerably. I used to go to Gita Nagari, and it used to be, you go to Harrisburg, it'd be like $250. And you think, wow, $250, wow, okay. Now you go, I don't even know how much, you have Easy Pass now. I think that was a trick. You got everybody on Easy Pass, so you don't even know how much you pay for the toll. But it's like, $25, $30 just to go. So going to New York, tolls are expensive and such like that. So the prices have gone up. It's $50 per seat. But it's a very convenient way to go. You don't have to worry about parking. You don't have to worry about tolls, gas, anything. It's all included in there. And you get to have a nice association with devotees. You get to go up, we're chanting, reading, discussing topics about Krishna. So if you're interested in doing that, sign up at the front desk. And there'll also be an announcement in the newsletter coming up during this week, which you can sign up there. First come, first serve. We have an announcement for book distribution.
Hare Krishna. So last week in Philadelphia, ISKCON, in the surrounding area, we distributed for the pleasure of Sri Radha Bihari and Srila Prabhupada 23 books in the Philadelphia area. So we have a book table if anyone would like to come check out any books. So Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna also. Those people who might be coming new or for the first or second time, I don't know if there's anybody out there, but we'd like to welcome you with a special gift. So I have these coupons. So if you come and see me, I'll give you the gift coupon. Please come, and it's a special gift at the book table. So see you there. Oh, and do sign up for this the Rath Yatra July 11th, June 11th. Sorry. When's the last time you went on a field trip? It's like a field trip, but it's fun. Okay, Hare Krishna.
So we're going to serve Prasadam outside. It started to rain a little bit, and then it stopped, and we have the benefit of having a tent out there because there was a wedding ceremony. We had a luncheon out there today, so we're going to use that so you can stay underneath the tent if you'd like. But it stopped raining, so we're going to serve out Prasadam outside so we can all have Prasad together. Hare Krishna. Any questions about any of the upcoming events? Okay. Oh, one last Rath Yatra. This is kind of far away, but it's good to always get it in your mind. July 2nd is the Atlantic City Rath Yatra. More information to come, but just put it on your radar, mental note of it. July 2nd, Atlantic City Rath Yatra. Hare Krishna. July 16th. We'll say it. Or Gita Nagar. July 30th. We'll put that out when we put it in.